Hello, juniors. You have an upcoming lesson on some poetry, and I'd like to talk about one of these pieces of literary terms called the stream of consciousness. This is a term that is used and applies to Hemingway's writing, and we haven't read anything that Hemingway has written, but Farewell to Arms is one of his most famous pieces. Also Old Man and the Sea. So if you're going to read any Hemingway, those are two that I would suggest you do. And what he does in his work is he uses something called the stream of consciousness. So if you take a look at what this actually refers to, it means that it's a style or technique of writing that tries to capture natural flow of a character's extended thought process, and often incorporating sensory impressions or incomplete ideas, unusual syntax, and rough grammar. Some additional key details of that include associating it with the early 20th century modernist movement, which Hemingway falls in that category. The term stream of consciousness originated in psychology before literary critics began trying to incorporate it and include it in their narrative style that depicted how people thought or their thinking progressed. Also, stream of consciousness is used primarily in fiction and poetry. So Hemingway wrote the fiction, and we are going to see it in some of our upcoming lessons in poetry. But the term has also been used to describe even plays and films that attempt to visually represent a character's thoughts. Now, one of the things that I think is important about stream of consciousness, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I'm pulling a lot of this information from lit charts. And this is the teacher's version of the lit chart, and it helps when you're instructing and having a good background of a particular literary technique that is rather difficult. So if we're trying to understand stream of consciousness, we want to understand that we are listening in on the character's thoughts, and that technique often involves the use of language in unconventional ways in an attempt to replicate the complicated pathways that often are taking place as they unfold and they move through the mind of the character. And in short, it's that use of language that mimics the streaming or the nature of conscious thought, and that is where it gets its name, stream of consciousness. So stream of consciousness can be written in the first person as well as in the third person. So we'll see it, especially in the poetry, keep it pretty simple. Now, in traditional prose writing, it's highly linear. It's one thing or idea that follows right after another in a more or less logical sequence, as in a line. A stream of consciousness is often nonlinear in a few key ways that define the style, and it makes use of unusual syntax, also grammar and associative leaps, repetition, and plot structure. So I'm going to go down through a couple other things as we see some examples. So this is a stream of consciousness in Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. She had a perpetual sense as she watched the taxicabs of being out, far out to sea and alone. She always had the feeling that it was very, very dangerous to live even one day. Not that she thought herself clever or much out of the ordinary, how she had got through life on a few twigs of knowledge Farley and Daniels gave them. She could not think. She knew nothing, no language, no history. She scarcely read a book now, except memoirs in bed, and yet to her it was absolutely absorbing. All this, the cabs passing, and she would not say of Peter, she would not say of herself, I'm this, I'm that. Now, you have to realize that when you're using stream of consciousness in a piece of literature, this is what starts to make it difficult to understand, because in fact, we are falling into the thoughts of the character. Now, another work that we might see it is in Beloved by Toni Morrison, and she uses stream of consciousness in passages in Beloved, and this one we hear the voice of a character named Beloved who's been in the spirit of the murdered infant of another character named Sethi. I'm alone. I want to be the two of us. I want to join. I come out of blue water after the bottoms of my sweet swim away from me. I come up. I need to find a place to be. The air is heavy. I'm not dead. I'm not. There's a house. There is what she whispered to me. I'm where she told me. I'm not dead. I sit. The sun closes my eyes, and when I open them, I see the face I lost. Sethi's is the face that left me. Sethi sees me, see her, and I see the smile. Her smiling face is the place for me. It's the face I lost. She's my face, smiling at me. Now, if you can realize as you're looking at that, you notice punctuation is non existent. There are also spaces where it interjects where it would be another sentence. And so you can see that that creation of stream of consciousness also is going to adjust and abrupt our grammatical structure, sentence structure, and also creates these short little snippets in Toni Morrison's work, which was not the way that Virginia Woolf had written in Mrs. Dalloway. So, stream of consciousness is a much making use of associative thought, and it's a style of writing, and we're going to see that in some upcoming poetry. So, good luck as we encounter some new literary pieces, and be aware that stream of consciousness is going to sound at times disjointed.